Most of us have a terrible relationship with work, and the latest Apple TV show Severance really exposes that. Now, one reason I believe people love this show is it taps into an idea we've all wondered ourselves. Can we truly separate our work life from our home life? And even if you have a job that clocks out, your brain never seems to rest, does it? So if you don't know the premise, here's how Ben Stiller explains it.
There's a procedure called the severance procedure where they put a chip in your head. And when you go through, in this case, you go into an elevator and it triggers the chip, you forget everything about your life on the outside. You go to work, you do your job all day, then when you go back in the elevator, it triggers the chip again and you forget everything that happened at work. So
this all reminds me of Ecclesiastes 4:5-6. It's a riddle about 3 different ways we approach work. One is the fool who does nothing but work and can never rest. The show calls this person the innie. Another is the fool who does nothing but rest and never works. The show calls this person the outie. Even the show seems to assume the one who never works, the outie, has the good life. But does he really? Ecclesiastes actually points to a third option. It's the wise man who knows the emptiness of both paths and is able to hold work and rest in its proper balance. Now, this concept of work has been a struggle for mankind throughout history. As followers of the way, it's something we must wrestle with because we know we ought to work because it's a gift. So I think the Hebrew word for work is very helpful here. It's called avodah, which has 3 different meanings depending on the context by which it was written in. One is worship, which means you work hard for the Lord. Another is service, meaning you work hard to build others up around you. But the last is calling, which means you work hard because it flows from your giftings, your skills, an understanding of your season of life, and this endless energy you may have. Now, calling seems to be the hardest one for me to figure out, and I don't think I'm alone in that, which is why I think you should buy this book. Hey, Van Campers, I am Pastor Trey, and I believe one reason your life is filled with frustration is because you are not intentional with spiritual formation. And so if you sub to my channel, I can help you get more intentional about your walk with Jesus. One way I can help you is by pointing you towards the right books. That's what this video is for. Now, last year I took a sabbatical and made a whole series about it on YouTube. It was a really fun vlog to make, but I took a sabbatical because I needed rest, but also because I wanted to get some clarity on my own skill sets and how it can be best used for the kingdom of God for this new decade of my life as I entered into my 30s. So my mentor and spiritual director advised me to read this book, The Making of a Leader, and it has been the best book for me to understand my calling in this season of life and really understanding what the next season of life will look like as well. So the premise of this book is walking through the 6 phases of leadership, and I think it is pure gold. According to Clinton, the author, phase 1 is the foundation. So God is sovereign, and it's our responsibility to respond to how God is shaping us. So in this time, we are shaped by God through our family, our environment, and natural wirings that God has created within us. And so we understand that. We seek clarity on that to help us take the next step of what our job, what our calling will look like. Phase 2 is called inner life growth. This is when your potential as a leader is identified by those around you, and it stirs within you. There's an excitement about it. And so you begin to journey into maturity by praying and hearing from God and stepping into these new leadership roles. So he calls the next phase 3, ministry maturing. It's no longer a theory. You are stepping into your gifting through a lot of trial and error. You also learn a lot about people because your leadership role demands that you deal with conflict. I was really encouraged when he mentioned the purpose of going through phase 1 through 3, because he put it this way. He says, God is working primarily in the leader, not through the leader. I know when I first started ministry, when I started my church plant 6.5 years ago, I was so frustrated that I wasn't experiencing as much fruit. But looking back, I can see God was doing so much in me before he wanted to do something through me. Can you hear my daughter yelling in the background? No. If you have the humility to identify yourself in these early phases, you can then acquire the patience to keep persevering. And honestly, this book would have been so helpful for me just even a few years ago. What am I saying? A month ago. Phase 4 is called life maturing. So your calling has been difficult, but you've been pushing through. And so you're starting to see that ministry was always about the love of God. The whole vocation was about enjoying him. And so you start to care more about intimacy with Jesus, even more than ministry for Jesus. Now, a lot of people fall off in this phase or don't even reach this phase because they get obsessed with the fruit that they're finally experiencing from their hard work and labor. And so they stunt their growth and they don't grow anymore. Now, by God's grace, and I hope this is for me as well, some make it to phase 5, which is maximized ministry. You find the ministry sweet spot. Most days you are serving the people you have grown to love with the skill sets you have grown to enjoy. You know who you are and who you are not. And I'm jealous of this, and I want to get to this spot. Now, in this section, he takes a pause to encourage the reader. He says, as a leader, you should recognize that God is continually developing you over a lifetime. His top priority is to conform you to the image of Christ for ministry with spiritual authority. Enduring fruitfulness flows out of being. In addition to transforming your character, God will increase your capacity to influence through developing your spiritual gifts. Run that back one more time. That is very, very encouraging. So the very last phase is celebration. You've finished your race and you use your remaining moments to enjoy and bless the next generation. And this is at the very end of life. This is where we find the Apostle Paul in his letter to Timothy. Again, this should be the hope of all of us, but we cannot get there quickly, and it doesn't last very long because then we meet the Lord. So comment below though, which phase do you think you are in? And I'm going to pick a random commenter and I'm going to send them a copy of this book. So during my sabbatical, I had to come to grips with being in that awkward transition between phase 3 and phase 4. Still wrestling with that now. And that's the other gold nugget from this book, how to transition from one phase to the next. Now, again, each phase steps into the calling you were always made for. It's just a greater picture of it, and we can't rush the process. But to get there, it takes a lot of humility, obedience, and patience. And a huge reason we don't make it to the next phase of our calling is we fail God's testing of our character and our heart. So God gives us tests of what he calls integrity checks, obedience checks, and word checks. You're gonna have to buy the book though to learn what that exactly means. Link is in the description. Another book that I found helpful to pass these character tests that is blessing my soul right now is Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership by Ruth Haley Barton. It's a classic that I'm making myself read every single year. And it's a lot about those word checks, those integrity checks. And it's what I need. And I think it's what you need as well. So if you're interested in that book, check out my video right here. And until I see you next time, Jesus is better.